You're watching Trash Boat Incorporated.
So here's a question for all of you. What is the first character that comes to mind when I say the word cartoon? There is a good chance a lot of you thought of a certain yellow underwater sea creature.
Spongebob SquarePants!
Hopefully not just because you clicked on a video about that very same cartoon character, but hold up now. Go out and ask anybody the same question and there's a good chance they'll say SpongeBob. He may not be one of the classics like Bugs or Homer, but ever since his 1999 debut, SpongeBob SquarePants has dominated not only Nickelodeon, but has become nothing short of an icon for the industry of cartoons as a whole. Kids, teens, and adults were all mesmerized by such an odd but well-written cast and world down in Bikini Bottom. And what can I say, I was very much one of those kids. I was in love with everything associated with the show. It's near impossible to deny what a masterful cartoon SpongeBob was in its prime, but sadly, Nickelodeon saw what a money sponge they possessed and milked the franchise, and continues to do so till this very day. Any form of product they thought could even remotely sell, they slapped the cast of SpongeBob onto and put it onto store shelves, including but not limited to DVDs, clothing, toys, food, salt shakers. But if you're watching this video, I know what you gamers really care about. Video games. As you can imagine and probably experienced firsthand, SpongeBob has had a healthy relationship with the video game market. Ever since 2001, SpongeBob has had a nearly perfect record for yearly game releases on pretty much any console since that point in time. Although it has slowed down in recent years, a certain remake of an absolute chad among licensed games proves to rekindle the flames for the love of SpongeBob games. Now, I'm sure there's a small handful of games you're expecting me to talk about, but there's a group of SpongeBob games that I remember fondly from my childhood that often gets overlooked. We have to take a look back to the past, to the ancient tech of late 90s and early 2000s PC games. Now, you gotta understand, as a kid, I always preferred playing on any kind of console rather than the computer, which was reflected by my tiny collection that consisted exclusively on games based on cartoons. But there was always something so special about sitting at the computer desk and popping one of these bad boys in. A feeling that relaxing comfortably in front of consoles didn't give off. It was something mystical that's impossible to put into words. Looking back, there were 3 SpongeBob games in particular that defined my playtime with the computer as a kid. Not to say playing these games again in the year 2020 will be easy. See, gaming on the computer has never been quite as cut and dry as consoles. Instead of the console's more simple and individualistic approach, computers fall more so on a never-ending spectrum. Because of this, these old pieces of mere megabytes of data don't work out so well on modern PC setups. Is this an inconvenience? Perhaps, but I prefer to play on original hardware anytime possible anyways. And it doesn't quite get any more original than playing on the same computer as I did as a kid. Let's dive underwater to the wonderful world of Bikini Bottom to play some early SpongeBob PC games.
I'm ready.
Employee of the month.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy!
This game was not only one of the SpongeBob games I remember most fondly from my youth, but when I think of old school computer gaming, this is what comes to mind. I even have the email saved from where I rebought the game after I guess my original copy got lost or messed up. It was my first purchase through the wonderfully mysterious world of the internet. I got it for $5. What a steal. Basing an entire game's worth of story on an already existing franchise, especially a comedy, can make for a fun narrative to follow, but this game's story starts off kinda strange. The main cast of the actual show SpongeBob SquarePants just got done filming some kind of photo shoot or film session, which indicates the entire show as we know it is all fake. But everyone throughout the rest of the game still acts like they do in the show, so it could be a reality TV show, but those are always known to be fake too.
Your childhood was all a lie.
Anyways, Mr. Krabs gets some free tickets to an amusement park, Neptune's Paradise, and he decides to give them to Spongebob for being Employee of the Year, which makes me wonder why this game is named Employee of the Month. But anyways, there's one big problem. SpongeBob doesn't know how to get there. Also, he can't drive, and he's broke even though he works almost every day at the Krusty Krab. That's more than one problem. Employee of the Month can be categorized as a point-and-click adventure game. You point SpongeBob in the direction to go and click. He obeys your every command. If your hand cursor turns green, you can click for an interaction with the background or object, in which SpongeBob makes some kind of comment or quip about.
The name says it all.
These are littered everywhere across the game. Some range from a simple visual effect to that. If that sounds overly simplified, well, that's because it is. The game is like 97% dialogue between SpongeBob and whoever he stumbles upon on his quest towards Neptune's Paradise. That may sound extremely boring, but luckily the game's writing has that classic SpongeBob feel to it that will definitely get some chuckles out of you.
Could you tell me how to get to Neptune's Paradise, please?
Nope.
There's a scene where Mr. Krabs sells his own clothes just for a quick buck, and when you reach him, let's just be thankful for those strategically placed cans. Talking to just about everyone you come across is essential for progression, because when you start any one of the 4 chapters across the game, every area is locked. Except for the one you start in, of course. When talking to characters, there's normally multiple text options upon starting a convo with them. One to carry out the true purpose of the character interaction, normally ending up with them giving you an item or a new area to go to, a somewhat random dialogue that's either there to flesh out or pad out the game, or just simply for a laugh, and a let me leave this conversation option. The game boils down to basically a huge series of fetch quests for all the characters you meet. One person will want a specific thing that conveniently someone else has, but that person also wants something else that you find from someone else later. It is satisfying to see the efforts of all your running around come together towards the end of any chapter.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
SpongeBob learns of the best way to get to Neptune's Paradise, or really anywhere you want to go, public transportation. But hey, the game just started and we still got 3 more chapters to go, so it can't be that easy. After annoying the living out of the bus driver, a hurricane comes through. Wait, hold on. Do storms even happen underwater? Damn plot device. It leaves them stranded in rock bottom for forever, or until it stops raining. Whichever one comes first. We all remember that infamous episode of the show, Rock Bottom. Despite how good that episode was and how different of a place Rock Bottom is to the standard locations of Bikini Bottom, the show itself has hardly explored the area since then. Oddly enough, the games have taken up the mantle themselves to flesh out the area more so than the show ever has. Employee of the Month's take on the Dark Sea Abyss really does feel like a natural extension of that small area SpongeBob stayed around in the actual episode. While the game does utilize a lot of the main show's cast all throughout your adventure, with new locations outside of the show's jurisdiction comes new characters to meet. A lot of the new side characters have surprisingly poor voice acting. Not only that, but their mic and recording quality is honestly distracting on how bad it can be sometimes.
Yeah, so, what brings you to Bikini Bottom?
The beautiful beaches, the charming townsfolk, and the legends of buried pirate treasure.
I swear, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. You can't prove that.
Spring Boob Squire Pin.
Chapter 2 takes a rise in terms of difficulty that the rest of the game unfortunately does not continue. It is the hardest part of the game with how back and forth you have to go through all the areas, and with some item play that can be easy to miss. I mean, I say hardest very lightly as this game is incredibly easy. Even without taking my past experience into account, I would call this a good childhood introduction to point-and-click adventure style game design. If it was up to me though, I would make the game a lot more open-ended. A common trend throughout your journey is to get to a new area, talk to the 1 or 2 NPCs available, usually unlocking a new area in the process, go to said new area, rinse and repeat. Of course, it's not always that simple, but unlocking all of the areas from the start of a chapter could have increased exploration throughout the game. To complement this, perhaps each of the NPCs could have alternate quest lines depending on who you talk to first. For example, instead of bringing Jojo the repairman a Kelpsie for his tools, you could bribe him with this quarter you find, or put him under some kind of hypnosis spell with Marlin's wand. This would add so many layers to the game, but hey, I know this game was meant specifically for a children audience, and that kind of game design would just make their minds explode, right? As the game stands, if it somehow is still too challenging for you, or you ever just get stuck, there is a free hint system available at all times. These hints are nice for younger gamers and all, but the voice actor reading them off to you has one of the most unenthused voices I've ever heard.
SpongeBob needs to give the kelp bar to the nice lady at the information window inside the bus station.
Spongebob and Patrick learn how to harness the power of weather control, thus making their way out of Rock Bottom. We pick right back up from where we started before the storm came along, but this time the bus driver has had enough of the boys' shenanigans, leaving them stranded near their own houses, conveniently enough. Back to square one? Yeah, no kidding, everything we've done so far is for nothing. How will they ever make it to Neptune's paradise? We'll find out right after this commercial break. Oh. It's not time for that yet. You know, it's an odd feeling just now getting to the normal part of a SpongeBob game so late into the adventure. In just about every game starring the Sponge, you start from his house. It's a common beginning place for any long outing, and understandably so. Coming from the relatively dark area of Rock Bottom, it's a nice breather, but it's easily the shortest chapter, and the weirdest. This is an actual thing that people got paid for to program. A design choice that I never appreciated as a child is how the game tries to portray important items that you need to pick up to advance the story. See, every area in the game is hand-drawn and then converted into a 2D plane thingy. However, items that you can pick up are 3D models, which tend to stick out like a sore thumb when they're sitting on a 2D background. So whenever you see an object like this laying around, that means you should probably get to clicking. Sadly though, the actual item system feels a little unfleshed out. The game gives you up to 6 inventory spots, but you never come to a point where you surpass holding like 2 or 3 items max. Combining some of the items to make brand new items is also hardly ever used throughout the game. I suppose they limited how many items you generally have to reduce confusion for kids. But the items and puzzles are the cornerstone of the actual gameplay of the game, so it do be feeling a little weak, dog. All of that is okay though, because you can do this. So apparently everyone in Bikini Bottom got free tickets to Neptune's Paradise except for SpongeBob. But luckily for him, that includes Sandy Cheeks. And she has a freaking rocket ship that they can just use to fly to the park, right? There is still one more chapter to play through, so of course something has to go wrong and they crash in Bottoms Up. Basically, the community of 1%ers of the SpongeBob world. Despicable, I know. If Bottoms Up sounds like a place you ain't never seen in the actual show, that's because this entire chapter features strictly brand new locations, and the entire area that you explore easily feels like it could belong in some episode you'd watch in the early 2000s. Also, this has to be my favorite part of the game. Seeing SpongeBob interact with the rich fish creatures and constantly not being on the same page as them is hilarious. While fine dining at Sublime Seafoods, he orders a Krabby Patty. The waiter is so utterly disgusted by his request request that he literally throws him out of the restaurant. What's also hilarious is this running gag that's been building up over the course of the entire game. I won't spoil the payoff, but it's pretty good. Speaking of the entire game, we are already at the end. The adventure is very short. I mean, I knew what I was doing for the most part since I have beaten this game plenty of times before, but even then, each chapter only lasted around 20 to 30 minutes. Take into account that I actively tried to click on every single interactable object, so that time reflects all the game has to offer. Not surprisingly, it's really short if you just spam through the text. Like 15 minutes short. Yeah, 15 for the entire game. But yeah, come on, what's the fun in that, bruh? Spoiler alert! They eventually make it to Neptune's paradise, only to be slapped with the realization that their tickets are only valid for the following week. But surprise, surprise, everyone you meet along the way is throwing SpongeBob a surprise party.
That's me! Surprise!
Even the characters that SpongeBob had never met before prior to seeing them on his journey. And some of these dudes were extremely rude to him, as far as threatening to beat him up and literally throwing him out of their establishment. Oh well, I guess they needed as many reused models as possible, but yeah, everyone has a fun old time and the end. Congratulations, you won. Employee of the Month is the cornerstone of my nostalgia for PC games from back in the day, but playing it now, I unfortunately see this once upon a time huge journey as a really small and short game that has almost no actual gameplay or puzzle solving, which takes me no longer than 2 hours to go through. But even with the game being on the shorter side, each and every text box, character interaction, cutscene, item, and game location gave me a bite-sized nugget of that sweet nostalgic bliss we all appreciate from time to time. It is kind of hard to actually recommend going out and playing the game for yourself, not because the game is that bad, but actually trying to play it nowadays can be a huge struggle. I gave off the impression earlier that I was playing these games on my old family PC that could actually support these titles, and yeah, that's still kinda sorta true, but the major problem was trying to record gameplay for this video. See, if I tried to record through the old PC, I would have footage that looked kinda like this. And I kinda wanted people to watch the video for more than a few seconds. So I thought, well, how about I set up a virtual machine on my new computer that could run the games properly. With the help of my good pal Flare, we got a VM up and running, but to no avail, the game still crashed on startup. At this point, I was pretty much ready to throw in the towel for the video until this absolute mad lad, crazy human being, he gave me the idea to take my old computer, put it near my modern setup, plug the old computer into my capture device, which is hooked up to my modern computer, and play the old games through the recording software. It worked. It's really bizarre looking, but I did not question it because it saved the video, so thank you, Flare. That entire process makes me incredibly thankful for companies like Humongous Entertainment, who puts their old PC games like Pajama Sam on modern day platforms like Steam. They work simply as just downloading them and hitting play. If you somehow still have an old PC that can run these types of games with no issues, then maybe pick up Employee of the Month. Again, there's hardly any actual gameplay, and I know this is the nature of a children's point-and-click adventure in order to keep it simple and to the point, but there may be too little to warrant anyone outside of that children age group to actually play it. But if you are itching for more humorous Golden Age SpongeBob banter outside the cartoon, then you may be better off watching a Let's Play. Employee of the Month. Overall, a good trip back to my childhood, but perhaps it should have stayed there.
Change the world. My final message. Goodbye.
Hey kid, who watches YouTube?
Who, me?
Yes, you. Do you like Donkey Kong?
Yeah!
Trash Voting has Donkey Kong videos. Do you like Mario Brothers?
I like Mario, but I like Donkey Kong more.
We got the Super Mario Bros. Videos. Do you like in-depth looks into the inner workings of Mario Party mechanics?
Wait, what?
You already know we got it.
Is that everything? I mean, I like Minecraft. And Roblox.
UHHHHHHH.
Ooh, Operation Krabby Patty. That was my very first game. Good times. Good times.
Well, actually, SpongeBob, your first game was The Legend of the Lost Spatula, which came out earlier that same year, so I can kinda see how you got it mixed up. And you know, if you really want to be technical, your first video game appearance was Nicktoons Racing the year before that. God, is it me, or does Nickelodeon not know their SpongeBob facts?
Here we are at Bikini Bottom, and today we will be following my favorite creature, SpongeBob SquarePants, on his adventures around Bikini Bottom.
Okay, so quick disclaimer, for some reason this was the only game out of the 3 that I'm talking about today that gave me trouble trying to record the way I described in the Employee of the Month part of the video earlier, and even when I hooked the computer up normally, it would still give me this deep fried look that it has never done before, and it honestly kind of creeped me out at times, so I hope you don't mind the deep fried aesthetic that's going to be going on with this segment of the video, and if you do, I am so sorry, but I'll keep this one really short. You might be wondering if this game was indeed the earliest PC SpongeBob game, and I hold the game in the same regard as Employee of the Month with the whole nostalgia thing. Would it not have been better to talk about this one first? Well, I'll give you one good reason as to why that is. The game sucks. Instead of its younger brother's point-and-click gameplay, this title features 5 different mini-game-esque levels to play through. The story depends on which side of the bed you get up on. The right side or the wrong side. That's actually pretty clever. You Gary, we're going with the right side. The story barely exists and is solely there to try to string along the events of the different levels. Plankton steals a bunch of Krabby Patties and SpongeBob spends all day trying to warn Mr. Krabs. I have to admit, the cutscenes in between the levels can be pretty funny at times, utilizing some comedy that wouldn't quite work in the show.
Can you please draw the elevator in the correct location?
Remember when I used the word different to describe the levels? Well, I lied because they all feel almost the exact same. You just drag your mouse across the map to collect whatever the game is constantly nagging you about. I must say it's pretty fun the first time, and maybe even the second time. But by the third round of the same exact thing, it gets a little repetitive. And they thought they were slick by adding a bonus round right after that, which, surprise surprise, is the exact same thing. Last time I checked, this ain't Atari, boy. Get them points out of here! I guess they had to pan out the game for it as much as they could because you can just breeze through all 5 levels in less than 30 minutes. Alright, well, since we have the time, I suppose we can go save Gary. On the wrong side, you're greeted by 5 new levels to play. And when I say new levels, I mean the exact same levels from the right side. I think I'm having PTSD. Some of the levels at least have the audacity to change up the characters you play as. Not that it changes anything though. This just reeks of laziness. Even as a child, I never really liked this game, and I think I just reminded myself of why that was. Operation Krabby Patty? Get out of my face. SpongeBob SquarePants, Battle for Bikini Bottom. No, not that one. Now, if you've played the console versions, you should already know the story. Plankton makes a ton of robots and they wreak havoc among Bikini Bottom, but damn, the robots in this game are a lot more aggressive. This one just straight up busts into SpongeBob's room, and unlike in the console version where they just kind of terrorize everyone casually, in this one they actually take the main characters captive. Except for SpongeBob, of course. Also, look at this, the scene where the robot comes into the room. It's nighttime outside of SpongeBob's window, but a few seconds later we get a different perspective and it's suddenly daytime. Whoa, what do we have here? Reusing assets? You sneaky dogs. Yeah, I didn't cut that, it just kinda stopped. Weird. Alright, enough about the opening. The gameplay. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, let's take a look. Battle for Bikini Bottom's setup is more akin to Operation Krabby Patty's. Hold on now, the big difference here is the game isn't total buns like the former. The game is split between 5 locations with each holding 6 minigames to play through. But get this time there's actual variety in the gameplay.
What?
I also appreciate how this game is a lot more open-ended than the previous two. You can go to any area in the hub map at any time. So if you ever get stuck on one of the games, you can save it for later and just move on to somewhere else. I am thankful for the much needed variety in gameplay, but even within that variety, there are a couple of stinkers here and there. But it never hits a low point as badly as Operations gameplay, and even me playing it now, well outside of the intended audience age range, most of the games were entertaining enough to keep me going. I never noticed this as a foolish kid, but each area's minigames follow the same gameplay structure. Starting off, the first game will always be a Spongebob action stage. Now, of course, this should go without saying, but the minigames within a specific area match the themes of the area itself. For example, in Kelp Forest, you'll be swinging through vines. In the Flying Dutchman's graveyard, capturing flags is the objective. And in downtown Bikini Bottom, you're playing Frogger. You know, I don't think that's the best place for a public bench. I mean, that's just my opinion though. Simple and to the point is a good description for these action stages. They're fun for a little burst of enjoyment, but unlike Operation, they almost never stay past their welcome. I wouldn't say they're that difficult, but an added layer of challenge comes from having to collect all of the items throughout the game. These are mandatory for purposes you'll see a little later, but if you fail to even get one, you have to repeat the entire game over again. Playing through this game in particular, I started to pick up on the developer's major use of repeating and reusing assets from the previous PC SpongeBob titles. I know I was kind of joking about it earlier, but at some points throughout the game, it gets out of hand. Out of pocket, if you will. You know that capture the flag game I was talking about earlier? Well, I hope you don't mind listening to the same 2-second song loop over and over again. It worked alright as the map screen in a chapter of Employee of the Month, where you're on that screen for a couple of seconds max, but for a 4-minute game, I think you're better off muting the computer at that point. The second minigame type will be putting your brain to the test in some sort of puzzle challenge. These range from a simple memory matching game to rearranging a bunch of rocks in the correct order to The third game is where SpongeBob finds one of his friends being held captive by the robots. But at the very least, these same robots are civil enough to let you win their freedom back through a quiz show. How did these robots know this kind of information? Now, obviously, the questions center around whatever character you're trying to save. I was honestly surprised by the difficulty of some of the questions. They really do test your knowledge on the show, and other times they can be like this. You have 10 seconds to answer the question, but something that really irks me is as the timer goes down, some of the wrong responses disappear. This makes some of the trickier questions basically free if you just wait towards the end when only 2 choices remain, because the wrong choice that's left is usually incredibly obvious that it's wrong. Once you win the quiz and set them free, they're itching to get back at some robots. The fourth game plays out similar to the first action stage you played as SpongeBob. The Mr. Krabs game has to be my absolute favorite. You just go around and straight up fight the robots. Crab Claw to Metal Fist going at it. All of the items you've collected throughout the game come into play in the 5th game, what I creatively dub the item game. With the large amount of items you have collected, there's not much the devs could have done to try and incorporate everything, so it's usually just rearranging the items in some way, like putting all of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's gadgets back on the wall based on the sound they make, helping SpongeBob get dressed, or returning all the props to
the magic shop.
Yeah, the
magic shop.
The magic shop.
I gotta say, the narrator who voices all of the game explanations and the titles had way too much fun in the recording studio.
Shh, sneaky feet. Sandy trivia. Hide me money.
The sixth and final game of any area is some sort of high score based activity. These are fun for a couple of minutes, but I'm not trying to set any world records, so that's enough for me. Alright, that is it for SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom for the PC. Make sure to like the video and sub. I have to talk about it. The chum bucket. The bane of my existence as a child. This single area caused me so much pain and trauma. Why is that? The rest of the game overall is pretty good and child-friendly. Well, somebody goofed. My youthful frustrations come from only 2 of the games from the chum bucket.
Hall of Arms. Robot Roundup.
Hall of Arms is the puzzle game, and at first it doesn't seem that bad. You just click the switches in a specific pattern to make it through. Not too bad, right? The game starts with all the switches facing upwards with absolutely no form of hint of what pattern you need to make. You spend the first 5 minutes just flipping the switches in random patterns of what you think might be right, but most likely nothing happens. You spend the next 5 minutes looking more of an idiot than you already do for thinking you can overcome a puzzle designed for ages 6 and up. I'm serious, I'm actually trying to get through this. I'm not even playing for the video. Nothing's working. And finally, you spend the last 5 minutes looking up a walkthrough before you lose your sanity.
It gets worse.
Robot Roundup is Sandy's action stage where she stands in the middle of the screen to bust up some robots. You do this by drawing circles around the oncoming horde of robots before they can reach Sandy. Again, not too bad, right? The fatal mistake is that instead of pressing down on the mouse to draw the circle, your cursor is constantly dragging a line in which you make the circle with. The problem is that the robots are coming from multiple directions, so you're always having to drag your mouse across the screen, which makes you draw circles that you don't want, or these really tiny circles that do nothing. But what makes it most frustrating is that the hit detection with the circles and the robots is absolutely terrible. To just put the cherry on top, this is also an item game, so you have to collect those if you want to continue. At first, this isn't a huge issue, but close to the end, when the robots get faster, it's just too much. Look at that, I drew the circle twice, and nothing happened. Look how close that is. Life is pain. Honestly, at this point, it's not even worth finishing the game. Yeah, if you stop now, you won't be able to see the ending, but trust me, you're not missing much. Again, it's the same story as the console versions, but this time it's more of a joke. There's no climactic final battle, they just flip the obey plankton switch back on, and the end. You know, it's kind of weird to say this, but Battle for Bikini Bottom feels like the natural evolution of PC SpongeBob games up till this point. It takes what works from Employee of the Month and Operation Krabby Patty, but leaves behind their mistakes for the most part. The cutscenes in between each and every game give off that same humor style as Employee of the Month.
You see, it's not the size of the fish that counts, but it's the motion in the ocean.
Yeah, that's, pretty funny.
And I think the gameplay speaks for itself. It blows Operation out of the water. Ah, man, oh man. Looking back, these games were good, mostly good, in my youth, but sometimes things you like as a child don't translate that well into adulthood and beyond. I'll never forget you, Employee of the Month and PC version of Battle for Bikini Bottom. F you, Operation.